Hello, and welcome to Wallace's Mysteries of Antiquity. Subscribe to this series to join me in exploring the enigmas of our distant ancestors and try to come to tentative conclusions about them. On February 25th, 2015, a user posted an image to Reddit of a clay tablet in the British Museum with a plaque reading, "Complaint about delivery of the wrong grade of copper." On the same day, another user commented a translation of the tablet from the 1967 book Letters from Mesopotamia. I'll give you the details of that later. Its relatability of dealing with rude and shady businessmen, as well as the absurdity that we know this man's name just because he was an asshole 4,000 years ago, caused the situation to be memeified and has made it into the vernacular of the terminally online. This will be a sillier video than normal, but I want to look at the man, the myth, the legend, the shady copper dealer himself, Ea-Nasir, and clear up some misconceptions and provide you with everything we know about him. First thing, although you may see this figurine memed with him, this is not Ea-Nasir. We have no idea who this is. It is associated with him purely because the internet found the expression worthy of the shady dealer. In actuality, it's believed this type of figurine with eternally wakeful eyes is praying and watching over somebody as they sleep. While we have no image of Ea-Nasir, these are contemporary to his time, so they can give you a basic understanding of his look and the wardrobe of men at this time. But we can learn more about examining his house and neighborhood. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, the ancient city of was excavated by a joint expedition of the British Museum and University Museum. Was a walled city of about 60,000 people in present-day southern Iraq, with this ziggurat at its heart. To give you some context of when and where we are, may have been the birthplace of the biblical Abraham, so right at the genesis of the Western world. In November of 1930, they started on their 9th season of excavation, and in particular a housing section of the city. In it, we see a city layout not unlike a modern city. They identified homes, shops, a school, religious buildings, a baker's square, and even restaurants. You can also see how densely packed the city was, and it's difficult to even tell how the walls separated the space. Where did Ea-Nasir live? Right here, number 1 Old Street. It was a fairly common style house, though you might notice he does have a larger house than a lot of his neighbors. He would enter from the road through the narrow corridors labeled 1. Room 2 was a central living area. Branching off of each of the 4 directions were additional rooms, although it appears as though Ea-Nasir had walled up the southeastern parts and sold it to his neighbors at number 7 Church Lane. He had a religious chapel labeled 6, and although 5 also had a chapel and tomb underneath it, it seemed to have been a guest room. He lived in the shadow of the Great Ziggurat, and under a ruler known as Rim-Sin. You may be surprised to learn that we don't only know his name from customer complaints. It appears as though he was a reputable dealer in his youth. He was documented as supplying the palace itself with copper in the 11th and 19th years of Rim-Sin's rule. He was a member of a traders' guild called the Dilmun Traders. Dilmun was a neighboring territory bordering the Persian Gulf. It seems he would source his copper from here and then sell it in It is important to realize that the reason we have these complaints about Ea-Nasir is because he was the last owner of this house. The tablets were made of clay and meant to be temporary, usually ground up and recycled into more clay. He was living in the last days of after the Babylonians had asserted control over it. I wonder if war and strife was affecting the supply of copper. Ea-Nasir may have been forced to flee his home. So let's get to the juicy bits, the copper. We don't just have one complaint, we actually have three of them that tell a narrative. Let's look at our first complaint from a man named Arbiterum. To be clear, these are not chiseled from stone, but made in clay, in which a stick was used to imprint the message while it was wet and soft. It'd then be baked and hardened. We cannot make out the entire text, but I will read what is visible. All right, let me look ahead. Oh, yikes. So, I got a problem. This is me. I'm the one on the right. As you can tell, my complexion is quite pale, and even though this is a person's literal name, I'm not sure I have enough melanin in my skin to say it. Luckily, I have a way around that. Please welcome the lovely Mrs. Wallace to the channel. Arbiterum writes to Ea-Nasir.
You have given the copper, and give the silver and its profits to Niganana. I have made you issue a tablet. Why have you not given me the copper? If you do not give it, I will recall your pledges. Good copper, give again and again. Send me a man.
Thank you, honey. I did warn y'all this would be sillier than usual. Anyway, when Arbiterum said, I have made you issue a tablet, that appears to be a written contract between the two of them. I believe that the threat to recall pledges is also in reference to this contract, probably a threat to end it. Arbiterum directs Ea-Nasir to provide the copper, or perhaps a refund in the form of silver, to his business associate, who I made my wife name. Trust me, I looked for an alternate spelling. While sometimes the name ends with an I, the first part is what it is. Ea-Nasir appears to ignore this complaint, as sometime later, Arbiterum wrote again.
Why have you not given the copper to Niganana? Illidenum says. The copper that Niganana has received is mine. Be kind enough to give the copper, as much as he has a claim on you, to Niganana.
It appears from the second tablet that Arbiterum's business associate did receive some copper, but that it had actually already been promised to yet another dealer. Perhaps this was another contract that needed to be fulfilled. It seems Ea-Nasir was making it a habit of receiving criticisms for his dealings, as we now hear from Illidenum himself, writing, The work that you have done is so good. 1 year ago, I paid silver in a foreign country. You shall hold back only bad copper. Please bring your copper. Considering the specific mention of bad copper, it seems Ea-Nasir had either already sent him substandard copper or already had a reputation for doing so. It's also interesting that Illidenum lengthened the word so good, showing that this form of sarcasm is at least 4 millennia old. Finally, we get to the famous tablet. From the go-between himself, writing on the front and back of a clay tablet, quote, Now when you had come, you spoke, saying thus, I will give good ingots to Jimil Sin. This you said to me when you had come, but you had not done it. You had offered bad ingots to my messengers, saying, If you will take it, take it. If you will not, go away. Who am I to be treated in such this manner, treating me with such contempt? And that I, between gentlemen, such we are. I have written to you to receive my money, but you have neglected it. Repeatedly, you have made them return to me empty-handed through foreign country. Who is there amongst the Dilnum traders who has acted against me in this way? You have treated my messenger with contempt. End quote. That scathing letter was only the first side. Our offensively named go-between continues on the backside of the tablet. Quote, And further, with regard to the silver that you have taken with you from my house, you make this discussion. And on your behalf, I have sent 18 talents of copper to the palace, and Sumi Abdun also gave 18 talents of copper, apart from the fact that we issued the sealed document to the temple of Samos. With regard to that copper, as you have treated me, you have held back my money in a foreign territory, although you are obligated to hand it over to me intact. You will learn that here in I will not accept from you copper that is not good. In my house I will choose and take the ingots one by one. Because you have treated me with such contempt, I shall exercise against you my right of selecting the copper." End quote. Out of all of the people that Ea-Nasir had wronged, our friend here seemed to be the most upset, and you can imagine why. Not only was Ea-Nasir giving him the runaround with regard to Arboretum's copper, but he and an associate appeared to have delivered 36 ingots to the palace to cover the slack of Ea-Nasir. He appears to be demanding the ability to select the copper that he wants and asserts that he has the right to do so. And that was the last we ever heard about our shady copper dealer. I'd considered that the destruction and downturn of could have interrupted copper supplies, though that doesn't appear to be the case, as 36 ingots were able to be delivered to the palace by other dealers. It was only Ea-Nasir that was having problems. We may never know anything else. His house was abandoned along with the complaints. Did he die? Flee? No one ever used his house again, and the complaints would be buried for 4,000 years before being uncovered to give us this unique insight into the lives of a member of one of the earliest civilizations. Thank you for listening. Respectfully discuss this absurd situation in the comments and subscribe to continue to explore our distant ancestors with me.